Hey everyone, how's it going? Michael Pickens here for our Libertarian Leadership Academy weekday live stream. Coming to you right now before Ty logs on here. Here he is. Awesome.
How's
So
it
we got
going?
Ty, fantastic. We got Tighe Galvin. He is the chair of the Libertarian Party of Clark County. Him and his crew are kicking ass out there. He's one of four candidates currently running for office in Clark County, Nevada, and he's also running for Assembly District 21. Welcome to the show, Ty.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, you guys are doing some awesome things out there. Not only are you the chair of the county organization, but you decided to step up and also run for office. Can you tell me about why you did that?
Yeah, well, kind of like you're saying, being the chair, and thinking about the future of the Libertarian Party, especially in the state and the county, it all relies on our candidates and our messaging. So, I decided I wanted to run because I wanted to kind of dip my toe in and I wanted to play a part in the messaging. And I also feel like, my, neighbors are not represented either in the Nevada Assembly. So wasn't just a practical decision for the party, but it's also about, getting proper representation and making sure that there's an actual choice that people can believe in when they vote in November.
Absolutely. Having a candidate representing the principles of liberty on the ballot, Republicans, they like to talk a good game. They say, what do they say? That like they campaign like Ron Paul and then end up governing like Lindsey Graham or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of times a bait and switch. Whereas
Mhm.
libertarian candidates, we run as libertarians and we govern as libertarians. So
Yeah. And that's something, not only, we feel it kind of more because we tend to eat up a lot more of that Republican vote generally, but it's the same with the Democrats, especially now. And, it's something that I kind of face head first because of my district and my area. It's heavily blue. There's only a Democrat running in
mhm.
my election. There's no Republican candidate at all. And, Democratic voters should be frustrated now more than ever because the Democratic Party is not doing what they've claimed to be doing. They're supposed to be the anti-ICE, party. They're supposed to be pro equal rights and pro civil liberties. They're supposed to be the ones standing up to the authoritarianism of this current administration, and they're not doing it like they never have. So, I think we have the opportunity to win over not only the Republicans that have always felt like the GOP has done them dirty, but we also have a lot of opportunity to pick up these Democrats now that are totally disillusioned by how the Democrats are running the country or how the Democrats are playing opposition.
Yeah, absolutely. So historically, when libertarians are running in two-way races, they get higher vote totals.
Yeah.
I know in my county, in Pacific County, Washington, we had a libertarian candidate for county commissioner, and he got 48.6% of the vote. He almost won. It was him against a Democrat. So you have an opportunity in this race to get a win, not just get a win, you would be the highest elected libertarian in the entire country.
Yeah, and in Nevada, it would be the first elected libertarian in Nevadan history. We've had a libertarian in the assembly because a Republican has switched over party registration, but it would be the first time a libertarian's actually elected. And I'm hoping that it's not just me, but it's our other three candidates too, like you mentioned. I think we're at, a turning point in Nevadan history. We have to take the opportunities that we can. Um,
Yeah, I
for sure.
remember when that state representative switched over,
Yeah,
right? I don't remember his name. I think his name was John. I can't remember his last name. Um,
can't remember.
and he switched over. He represented the Libertarian Party. He did a decent job until the very end. He was the deciding vote for paying public funds for the new football stadium.
That's
You
right.
remember that? Yep.
Absolutely. That's one of the big things I'm running on.
Is
You
making
know,
sure
it's
public funds don't go to the Raiders stadium or
100% making sure that nothing like that happens again because no tax. First of all, taxation is theft to begin with,
yep.
is my belief. But at least taxes should not be funding these special interest projects that the NFL is more than capable of standing on its own 2 feet, being
Oh
able
yeah.
to purchase land and participate in the market like they should and like they're good at too. By the way, they do not need the tax dollars of everyday working Nevadans who are already struggling right now in this economy. And they just tried to vote for tax credits to big movie companies. They were trying to turn Las Vegas into the next Hollywood. So that was just bipartisan support. Of course, it didn't end up passing in the assembly, but it had bipartisan support. They're doing the
Mhm.
same thing with F1 here. They shut down the whole strip and they let F1, do their races there. And, I was going to college last year, and a lot of my peers and me, we just didn't go those days because it would take like an extra hour because you'd have to drive around F1. And I can only imagine that for a person that's trying to put food on the table for their family, and they
Yeah.
might have to lose an extra hour because our government decided that F1 can use our public streets for their events. I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, and look at the NFL. Now they have two halftime shows. They're doing great. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. They got people doing halftime shows for them. They don't even have to.
Well, so the thing is, it's like politicians with the F1 shutting down the strip, right? It's
Yeah.
like they don't take into account average citizens, right? They're just looking after their corporate interests or looking after the money coming in. They're like, oh, look, we can get more people in town. We can get more tax revenue
Hmm.
from this. We'll shut down the strip. Who cares about Ty trying to go to college? Who cares
Exactly.
about so and so trying to get to work?
Exactly. And it's easier to maintain that, as long as people aren't seriously struggling. But we're getting to that point where now people are so disillusioned where those talking points don't win them over anymore about getting more tourism to Nevada. Nobody cares about getting tourists into Nevada because so many people are leaving Nevada and going to other states and going to other places. My parents moved out of the country, because simply it was more affordable to live in Ireland, which is a place that, for centuries people have done a mass exodus from to have a better life here in America. And now the table is totally turned, and so it's very unfortunate. And like I was saying earlier, I think that's our opportunity, as libertarians, to say we're not a special interest party. We
Mhm.
might be small, we might be, we might not win a lot of elections like people say, but we're not on any lists that are coming out right now. We don't take any money and spend it on these things, and we're totally against that. And so that's why I think we need to start eating up a lot of these grassroots Democrats too, that I think could really relate to that. And a lot of Ron Paul supporters were actually in a very similar vein in the early campaigns.
Yeah, absolutely. They're fighting against corporate interests, Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party and the coalition that was built
Yeah.
back in that time. But I look at what's happening right now. I just saw an article that, New York City has a $1.5 billion budget deficit. The city of Syracuse has a $100 million budget deficit.
Mm.
Rochester has a $35 million budget deficit. And I just looked it up, and Las Vegas is confronting a $110 million budget deficit. And instead of like looking at their expenditures
Yeah.
and figuring out how to cut spending, they're
Yeah.
looking to bring in F1 and raise taxes on
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
across the
Yeah.
board.
Or let's build a new Hollywood here. That'll fix it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's just another part of our politics. Of let's pass this bill, let's get this motion, let's get this question passed, and then we'll all be good. This election is the most important one in your life. As soon as you vote for me, you never have to worry about it again. And like I said, I think that the time has come where people cannot look away at this point. They can't keep their
Mhm.
heads in the sand. You see it with Republicans, with Epstein, and I think you see it with Democrats when it comes to ICE and everything that's going on with that.
Yeah, neither of the old parties are serving their constituents
Yeah.
properly. They're just taking
Yeah.
the money, they're spending it on their friends and themselves. And, you know,
Hmm.
I didn't look at any salary increases for Clark County, City of Nevada, anything like that. But in Washington State, there was record spending increases, record government employee salary increases, record political politician increases. Right, our
Yeah.
county, everyone in the county got an increase. All of the employees got pay increases, except for the sheriff department because they don't like him. So, but everyone else got got pay
Yeah.
increases. So it's
Wow.
just crazy.
It's very similar here. I can't I can't recall if there were any increases, but I do know that I'm a special education teacher here in the public
Mhm.
school system in Clark County, at a Title I school. So it's very low income and faces a lot of struggles. And, our superintendent of Clark County School District, third largest district in the county, she gets paid more than the president of the United States.
Yeah, what is it, 600, 700,000,
Yeah,
something
over
crazy
four
like
hundred
that?
thousand dollars, and then you have the rest of her cabinet or whatever, and they're all making over 400K, and they're the ones making the financial decisions for the district.
Yep. Yeah, we really have to go into these budgets and
Yes,
see,
yes.
you know, I think all government jobs should be tied to the median income of their region, whatever it
Mm,
is. If it's a city, they
mm,
need to be tied to that, or the county or the state, and that should be the ceiling for
yeah.
government jobs. And that right there would incentivize the government to lower restrictions on prosperity. And I like to call it restrictions on prosperity because like for example, the cigarette tax, one of the highest in, all over the place. They just keep
Yeah.
raising the cigarette tax and they say, oh, they're doing it because cigarettes are bad for you, so we're going to tax it more. And then when you look at income and you look at all these other things they're taxing, it's like, okay, they increase taxes, make it harder to open a business, uh, increase sales tax. Like, okay, so they want people to suffer with their income too,
Hmm.
not just quit
Hmm.
smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol or doing all these things. It's like they are putting these policies in place that hurt the average American.
Yeah, and it's part of that political game, where they can just, they pass another bill, they make another talking point where they can shove it onto us, and it gets to the point where, like, you talk about not even just libertarianism as a philosophy, but just libertarian ideas to the average voter. And you talk about something like abolishing the Department of Education, and all of a sudden their mind thinks like, well, then there'll be no education.
Yep.
And they're just told, and it's
Definitely
like
not.
that.
Yeah.
Right, right. Like it's like we're trying to abolish education, period. And they just see the government as kind of this end all where, that's where the money happens, that's where the things happen. Once it gets through the government, then, problem solved. But obviously, since the Department of Education has been established, we've seen worse and worse scores of our students. We've seen the American education system just fall more and more in the rankings. Same with the Environmental Protection Agency. Things have just gotten worse and worse environmentally in America. They've been able to cover it up more because of, like, what
Yeah.
we've touched on, these special interests, and all of them are really a part of the same class, and they're ultimately a part of the same uniparty.
Yep. Yeah, so I want to go back to the Department of Education that you brought up, right? Carter was the one
Yeah.
who implemented that in 1979, started in 1980, and education has consistently gotten worse and worse and worse. And I believe it's because of that top-down control. They are
Yeah.
deciding the curriculum from the federal level, when in reality, every kid is unique, and
Mhm.
you as a teacher should be able to decide how best to educate the students based on their needs, and maybe even have other options besides just the one size fits all government option.
100%. And I mean, Nevada has tried to take steps in this direction. Like we have ESA, education savings accounts, where theoretically, parents should be able to spend their tax dollars where they see fit for their kids'
Mhm.
education. Um, so we've tried to adopt kind of school choice that hasn't really followed through on our end. And same thing with, like, the Clark County School District. It's a top-down issue. You have all these people, all these bureaucrats that we're talking about that have probably not even been in a classroom in 20 years,
Yeah.
deciding the education for everybody, and they have no idea what's even going on in a classroom these days.
Yeah, well, I look at it. My parents are educators, and my mom's retiring this year. She's been teaching her whole life, and
Mm,
they just they just get plugged into the system, and they
yeah.
get more worried about their pension and about the amount of money they're going to retire with,
Yeah.
and basically ignoring any of the things in the system that need to be fixed because they don't want to rock the boat and they don't want to jeopardize their retirement. So they just kind of turn a blind eye to the problems in the system. They don't want to challenge anything, and it's really sad.
100%. I see that very often. It's one of the main reasons why I'm so disappointed in the Clark County Educators Association out here, the public union out here, which does exactly like you said. It's a pair of golden handcuffs where,
Yep.
you're locked into the system, and you get these benefits of a pension and healthcare and all of these things that,
Hmm.
the everyday American struggles because of, like you said, these, what was it, restrictions on prosperity.
Yep. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, it's unaccessible. It's inaccessible to the majority of Americans. And so we
Yep.
have to get it through these government jobs. It's why so many people join the military. It's a jobs program.
Yep.
Um, and so, yeah, we definitely have that problem here too. And it's going to take educators really stepping up from the inside. And I mentioned earlier the education savings accounts. There's also been passage of bills that have made it to where schools can have a school organizational team, a SOT
Hmm.
we call it. So it's supposed to be kind of the teachers, the principals. The teachers elect a representative, the paraprofessionals have a representative, and they kind of are supposed to decide the school budget themselves. But it's so limited because however many layers CCSD has on top of that. There's only so many things that, like, I was on the SOT last year. There's only so many things that you can decide on that, and
Sure.
then it also, assumes that you have like a strong PTA, which is also something that we're losing in this country. A lot of parents aren't getting involved themselves, and it leads back to this thing of relying on the government and having the government do it for you. Where it's gonna take activists, it's gonna take educators putting in the work, it's gonna take parents caring about their kids' education, which I know they do, but it's gonna take us having to take that back away from the government if we're gonna fix it.
Yeah, so we've homeschooled and unschooled, and
Mm,
our 11-year-old daughter, like she just finished writing a book. It's over 300 pages, like at 11, you know.
mm,
But we've taught them personal development and confidence and how to find information and how to learn new skills and all these things that it don't really seem to be taught in government education. It's just more along the lines of the Prussian model where you need to be good workers and you need to be good listeners and you got to raise your hand to go to the bathroom, you got to raise your hand to speak, and it doesn't create leaders. And unfortunately, in the real world, we need more leaders, not followers.
absolutely. No, and you're 100% right. Referencing the Prussian model, that's exactly it. That's why, our kids start off going to kindergarten. There's a reason it's called that. It all comes back to that kind of system. And it's the reason why so many American kids, I remember joking about it when I was going to CCSD, like, feels like prison.
Oh
You're
yeah.
walking in a line and you have to be super straight and, or like that. And, you can't talk to anybody, you can't look this way, you eat on a tray and, it's
Yeah.
just slop and it's crazy. And, what's so insane about it is that other countries don't even do it this way.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's totally unfortunate. Education is one of those issues where I think people have to mobilize because it's something that touches everybody.
Well, that's why it's so important that you're running for office and the other three of your candidates there, your crew, your homies out there
That's right.
running for, assembly district. I just had Zach on yesterday. I've interviewed Gage, I've interviewed Steven. I'm having Steven on again tomorrow and Zach on the next day or vice versa. Um,
Awesome.
but
Great
yeah, it's
guys.
great. Yeah, it's great what you guys are doing out there because you're working as a team and you're
Yeah.
building an organization up
Mm, mm,
in Clark County, and that's something that we don't see a lot. Well, I haven't seen in a long time in the Libertarian Party. There's been a few states that have run slates. Like in Washington, we had 36 candidates in 2016, where everyone is kind of on the same page, unified, running for office, getting our message out there, and recruiting people to come into the organization and maybe not taking a hard line, anarchist or voluntist,
sure.
line in the sand, but opening it up to more of a big tent where let's just remove this or reduce the size and scope of intrusive government. Let's start there, you know.
100%. And I'm lucky. I've been involved in the party for a few years now,
Mhm.
and I came in post Mises takeover, so I didn't get to see a lot of that infighting that took place before. But my experience so far has been, there's Mises guys, there's people in the classical liberal caucus, there's a lot of people that aren't affiliated with anybody, and we all get along. We're all able to talk, and that's kind of something that ultimately, just to get a little more into the libertarian stuff, yeah, that's something that kind of disappointed me with the whole Mises revolution was that, I'm not affiliated with any caucus, but
Yeah.
when you talk about getting back to the Ron Paul revolution, these roots, of libertarianism, like exactly what you're talking about, building these big tents where we're just talking about limiting the size and scope of intrusive government. That's what we need to chip away. And even if your train is going to Ancapistan, we're going to hit those stops on the way. And so we're gonna have to chip it regardless, And so there's no reason to, not get to point A because not everybody is on the same page with point B.
Yeah.
And that's why, like me and Zach, we even went to like a youth communist event and we were campaigning there and canvassing there and handing out flyers to these young kids because a lot of them are there because they're so disillusioned with the Democrats and they see ICE picking up people, they see federal agents murdering our citizens on the street. They see the Democrats continuing to fund wars abroad and
Hmm.
just making excuses for it all. And so, if you're with us for that, let's get that done. Even you don't have to join the Libertarian Party. Let's get a question initiative together. Let's
Yep.
lobby together. And that's really what the state is afraid of.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that I look at it, like I didn't learn about Ron Paul and libertarianism until 2007.
Mm,
I graduated high school in 2002. I had no idea what a libertarian even was. So
right.
for you to go to a youth communist group, you just have to think like, I bet the vast majority don't really understand what a libertarian is. And they
Absolutely.
might have a skewed idea of what it is, but then when they get to meet you in person and shake your hand and see you're a real person and you care,
Right.
you know, about a lot of the same things they care about, because
Right.
the goal I see is the same. We want our kids to get educated. We
Yeah.
want prosperity. We
We all
want,
want utopia.
yeah, in our own way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we all want the best things, of course. And
Yep.
exactly like you're saying, there's even issue coalitions, even if it doesn't have to be necessarily making the party such a big tent, but we should do that too, because there's a lot of disillusioned people that, if you want to end the Fed, if you want to end our involvement in wars across the world stage, if you want to end surveillance on our citizens, if you want to limit, all kinds of if you're for decriminalization in a
Hmm.
general way, you know, not going after the jaywalkers and making sure that cops meet their quotas, but going after actual crime, then you shouldn't be with
Yep.
the Democrats or Republicans because they're
Yep.
not going to do that. They're not even focused on that.
Yeah. Democrats in Washington state have private prisons. They have some, they're still arresting people for mushrooms. And you know what I
Wow.
mean? It's like they
Yeah.
talk a good game, but when it comes down to it also, it's like they are still putting people in jail for victimless
Yes.
crimes and
Yes.
creating more victims in the process. So
Absolutely. And it's like, the Republicans say they're fiscally conservative, they say they're constitutionalist, and we know how that's worked out.
yeah, now look at it. The Second
Yeah.
Amendment, well, the Second Amendment doesn't apply at protests anymore.
Right,
You know
which
what I
is
mean?
something that, yeah, even I am like, I mean, even after the Charlie Kirk assassination, I mean, they were talking
Hmm.
about, there's limits to freedom of speech, and this is coming from the super hardcore MAGA, we're big Constitution guys. Yeah, all of that stuff goes out the window, doesn't it?
It does, and it's sad, and we have to get away from the cult of personality type
Absolutely.
situations. And there's a lot more people that have left MAGA, quote unquote MAGA, that are
Yeah.
waking up to it. So it is encouraging that people are realizing, well, Donald Trump is now just a tool of the military industrial complex.
Hmm.
He passed Operation Light Speed. He's a tool of the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
It just comes down to whatever's going to make him more money and
Yeah.
whatever he can crack jokes about, or
Yeah. If he can get the Nobel Peace Prize, or if he can, yeah, that's what it's all about. And ultimately, I think, for most politicians at that level, on the federal level, it's mostly about that. They're just better at hiding it.
yeah.
They're all about the prestige, and they're all about like they're all just running their campaigns. From the moment they're elected, they're planning their next campaign run.
Yep. Yeah, and that's unfortunate. And we have to stay principled. And I like Thomas Massey. I like Rand Paul. So Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna. So you've got a conservative Republican and you've got a liberal Democrat working together to
Yep.
get the Epstein files released. Finding common ground. they don't agree on a whole lot of things. Probably like 95% of the things they don't agree on, but they got the 5% that they do, and they're working together to make it happen.
Uh,
It reminds me of Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich. Kind of a
mm,
very similar
mm.
coalition there, right?
Yeah, no, and he even paired up with Ralph Nader as well over a few
Yep.
issues and stuff like that. Ron Paul. No, it's exactly what we're talking about. That's what it's going to have to take,
Mhm.
because we fight such an uphill battle as libertarians, and not even just as libertarians, but you can say the same for those youth communists or for the Green Party or for the Constitution Party or any of us that are on the outside of this system, which is
Yep.
really everybody. A lot of people like to pretend that I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat. They're caught up in it, but like you said, they're shedding away from that, and a lot of more people are getting disillusioned. And so it's going to have to take us building that coalition for them to join. And that's kind of my job as chair, is to make sure that the party is something that's attractive to these kinds of people that are looking for, you know, the next vehicle to restore our constitutional republic.
Absolutely. So I'm really excited about what you guys are doing there in Nevada. I'll be there on Friday. We're going to be doing a live stream from the Chiba Hut and candidate meet and greet. So it might not be at this time. I think we're doing the event at 6 p.m. So the live stream is going to be scheduled a few hours later.
That's right.
The live stream might happen at like 6:30 or 7. But I am excited about that and everything that you guys are doing. Um, is there anything else you'd like to touch on before we close this up?
Well, just anybody that's listening, make sure you look at your local libertarian candidates that are running, because so many people are just concerned with the general elections. But the truth is that a third of libertarians win their elections. And that's when it comes down to local elections, even a
Yep.
lot of races that are unopposed. Take a look and see in your district, in your area, what kind of seats are there, the things that people don't think about, justice of the peace or municipal seats,
Yep.
take a look at that, and vote for your local libertarian candidates.
Yeah, it's really exciting what's happening right now. I've been interviewing a bunch of candidates over the past couple of months, and
Yeah,
we're
and
doing
thank
these
you
almost
for that
every.
too. You're putting us on the map, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, well, it's great because you guys are getting experience. I'm getting experience. I'm learning about candidates all across the country that are passionate about it, and we have a huge opportunity here of building a new
Yeah.
major party to where
Yes.
the old parties start dropping away because of the publicity. And I talked to Zach about this yesterday, and it's like you guys are running as a coalition, all united, making it happen. What's going to happen in 2 years? Like, how many candidates are you guys going to have on the ballot in Clark County in 2 years because of your runs right now?
Exactly, and that's exactly what I keep telling people. Is it's hard to for a lot of people, it's hard to bring themselves to vote libertarian because they think they're throwing away their vote or something like that. But like you said, if we're running in a two-way race and we get something like 48%, that's people taking us seriously now.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Or
absolutely.
even if we're campaigning and we're door knocking, a lot of these people are registered libertarians, but they've never gotten a flyer from the Libertarian Party. They've never gotten a text or a phone call or a libertarian knocking at their door saying, "Hey, why aren't you
Yep.
voting? I haven't seen you at the meetups." And so that's what we have to start doing. And I think we are doing that. I think we're living at the perfect time in the Libertarian Party. I think we're already seeing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I actually moved out to Pacific County because of Dan Driscoll.
Wow.
Because he was running for office. Great guy out there. Had nothing to do with the beach and the bay and
That's just a
being
plus.
on the coast, right? Nothing to do with that. It was just because of Dan I moved out there. But if we can learn how to market and advertise properly, get visibility that we need, we can win these elections, and it's
100%.
doable.
100%. And I mean, if we have that, there's no reason why the Democrats or Republicans should keep winning elections.
Nope.
Because the truth is that the majority of Americans, they already do agree with us. And even if they don't agree with us on everything, the most important issues to them when it comes to Democrats or Republicans, I would reckon that they would side with us, that we take it more seriously than their own party. And they should be on
Yeah.
our side.
Absolutely. If we pledge not to be taking bribes, legal
Yeah.
bribes from these
Yeah.
corporations or special interest groups, you know.
100%.
So Joe Hanush, Joe is running for the fifth time out in Florida. He says Tighe sounds like a great candidate.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Awesome.
Exactly.
So I know that you don't have your campaign website up yet. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We're doing a lot of quick infrastructure builds right now, but it will be up hopefully by the end of the month.
But you do have the Libertarian Party of Clark County website that people can go and donate to. And, you guys are starting the process of running ads. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. We're going to start running ads. We're building a volunteer team. So we're going to be phone banking. We're going to be knocking on registered libertarians' doors, like we talked about, calling them up and activating people because that's what we got to do. So if you're interested in donating or supporting our candidates or our party, clark.lpnevada.org is the Clark County website, or you could just go to lpnevada.org, donate to either one. That would really help us out. And that's what we need because unfortunately, it's a money game.
Yeah, so go to clark.lpnevada.org. If you want to donate, I want you to donate specifically to Clark County. So these guys have control of the funds and can do what they need to do. I'm not saying anything wrong with the LP Nevada. It's just that these guys here in Clark County are making it happen. Four solid candidates, younger guys, and we've got to support what they're doing. So if you're watching this right now, give them $5, $10, whatever. Join, even if you don't live in Clark County. Join as a
Yeah,
member. Everything helps. And then when you come to Vegas on vacation, you can come to one of their bi-weekly mixers. Is that right?
100%. Every 2 weeks, we have little meetups. Lately, we've been having them at Chiba Hut, super casual. Obviously, we also do like our executive committee meetings and all the business stuff if you're interested in that. But yeah, if you're in Vegas, please check out our website, the one that was just put up. If you go to events, they're always up there. The address will be there. My contact information is up there. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. And I would love to see anybody there. Even if you're not a resident, please come visit us and say hi.
Awesome. Yep, I'll be there on Friday. I'm not a resident, not planning on being, but I'm coming to visit. So thanks so much for running for office, Tighe, and everything you're doing to advance the cause of liberty.
Thank you so much. Likewise, Michael. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.